The polished marble of Hanul Tower glints under the afternoon sun, reflecting the glare of expensive cars lining the curb. A sleek black sedan waits, door slightly ajar, engine ticking in impatient rhythm. Every eye on the street seems to slide past her, except hers. Min-ji Park grips the woven basket against her side, the thin strap cutting into her wrist. Packaged snacks jostle inside, rattling softly. Her knuckles whiten as she steps closer, heart hammering, each beat a warning she cannot ignore. The tall glass doors of the tower shimmer, and through them, the shadow of Joon-Ho moves. Sharp suit, leather briefcase, the kind of presence that makes people shrink back, but she cannot shrink. Not now. Her voice catches in her throat, then bursts out, urgent and raw. Stop. The world narrows. The cars, the murmuring crowd, the distant city noise, all fade under the weight of her warning. Joon-Ho pauses mid-step, hand hovering over the car door handle. His head tilts slightly, eyes flicking to her. Security stiffens, one guard stepping forward, suspicion etched into his expression. The other glances past her, unaware, distracted by the city flow. Min-ji's feet drag in the uneven asphalt, tiny scrapes against concrete. Sweat beads at her hairline. She sees the briefcase swing slightly, the reflection of sunlight off the polished leather. Some invisible shift, tells her time is measured in heartbeats, not minutes. One wrong second, and everything could collapse. Her chest tightens. The air smells of exhaust and polished chrome, a cold scent that raises goosebumps along her arms. The basket, filled with trivial street goods, feels suddenly like a lifeline, or a tether, binding her to a decision she cannot undo. She raises one hand, trembling yet firm. Every instinct screams to pull back. Every moral nerve refuses. The crowd murmurs behind her. Faces blur. Their indifference presses down, heavier than the tension in the space between her calculating, and Joon-Ho. Neutral, and yet sharp enough to slice through her frantic determination. The car engine ticks again, louder now. Her mouth opens, words forming, but the sound of her voice feels impossibly fragile against the weight of what she knows. A siren wails in the distance, a sudden intrusion that only magnifies the moment. Min-ji's eyes flick to the gods. One shifts, hand brushing near his belt, and her stomach drops. Seconds stretch, elastic and unforgiving. She senses, she knows, the danger waiting just beyond the gleaming black exterior of the sedan. Her basket trembles. Her voice rises again, more urgent, desperate. Please. Listen. Joon-Ho's hand hovers. 1 foot inches closer to the open door. Security tightens around him instinctively, but their timing is off, too slow to intercept what Min-ji has glimpsed, too slow to give her any certainty. She swallows a gasp. The ground under her feels unreal, the city noises distant, as though the universe has narrowed to the space between her warning and his next move. Her eyes meet his, and in that instant, the choice solidifies. There is no retreat. There is only action. And yet the stakes are impossible to measure. Life and death, guilt and responsibility, all balanced on this fragile collision of wills. The sedan's door clicks almost imperceptibly, a warning bell in her chest. The guards shift again. The crowd remains oblivious. And in that heartbeat, Min-ji Park realizes the moment she's been waiting for. Her warning, her voice, her courage, must land before the trap descends. A shadow passes across the gleaming glass, sunlight catching the edge of the briefcase. She takes a shallow breath, raising her voice one last time. The world holds its breath with her. The car door edges open further. The collision she cannot undo is about to unfold. The black sedan's door hovers open, but Min-ji Park freezes at the edge of the sidewalk, chest heaving, off the marble columns of Hanul Tower, harsh and unyielding, casting long shadows over the street. She can feel every eye that passes, every whispered step, but none linger where she needs them. Her voice, raw and urgent seconds ago, now seems swallowed by the city's indifferent hum. A firm hand lands on her shoulder, heavy and authoritative. Security guard Kong leans close, face unreadable, eyes cold behind mirrored sunglasses. "You can't go in," he says, voice low but final. The words hit harder than any blow. They press down on her chest, stifling. She opens her mouth, but the crowd behind the barricade murmurs in distraction, indifferent. The impossibility of her position weighs on her like stone. Her basket swings from her wrist, the packaged snacks rattling hollowly. Minji's fingers tighten around the strap until the knuckles whiten. Every step toward Joon-Ho now demands more courage than she can summon. She swallows, tasting the metallic edge of panic on her tongue. The briefcase glints through the tinted glass as if mocking her, a reminder that the moment is slipping, disappearing into the gleam of wealth and power she cannot touch. God Kong blocks her path with unshakable authority. This is off limits. Move back. His words are calm, clinical, but each syllable threatens to erase her chance entirely. Minji feels a hot rush of disbelief. No one notices the trap. No one sees the danger except her. The knowledge alone bears down on her spine, heavy, urgent. She senses the stakes with every fiber of her being. One wrong step, one hesitation, and the danger she glimpsed seconds ago could unfold. She shifts her weight, pivoting slightly to scan for another way. The reflection on the tinted glass shows Joon-Ho's sharp profile, paused mid-step, hand brushing the briefcase. His eyes flick toward the street again. Not fully understanding, not yet aware, he is a world away from her fear, yet the danger leans closer with panic climbing, but she refuses to retreat. A moment of silence stretches between her and the guard. Nothing moves except her shallow breaths. The city sounds recede, car horns fade, chatter blurs, leaving only the metallic tick of the sedan's engine and the low hum of tension. She closes her eyes briefly, pressing her forehead to the strap of the basket. The brief pause, deliberate and still, makes her aware of her isolation. No allées. No second chances. Just the choice. Act now or risk irreparable disaster. When her eyes open, she scans the perimeter. A narrow side entrance gleams in the corner of the building, overlooked by the security sweep. Heart thundering, she knows it might be the only route. But reaching it means risking confrontation, perhaps even arrest. Her mind races, weighing each risk, personal safety, credibility, time. The trap remains unseen, dangling invisibly over Joon-Ho, and only she knows. Minji steps forward, hesitant, her breath catching with each movement. The city around her feels sharper, edges more dangerous, reflections in the glass more cruelly mocking. Every security guard shift, every fleeting glance from a passerby, is magnified, echoing the stakes she carries alone. She realizes the moral cost of hesitation. If she falters, she will be complicit in whatever is about to unfold. Her basket swings at her side as she begins a careful, measured approach toward the side entrance. Guard Kong notices the movement and steps closer, narrowing the space. The sunlight reflects sharply off the polished concrete, casting long, distorted shadows that seem to stretch toward her like fingers. She tastes fear and adrenaline in the same breath, her pulse hammering. A whisper of movement inside the tower catches her attention. Joon-Ho's briefcase shifts again, as if foreshadowing the unseen danger. Minji's eyes widen, chest tightening. She has only navigate around the barriers without drawing fatal attention. Every step is laden with consequence, every breath a reminder of what she risks. Her gaze flicks back to the sedan, engine still ticking, door slightly ajar, as though measuring her hesitation. Minji knows time is bleeding away. One misstep, one glance, and the trap could spring. She swallows hard, tightening her grip on the basket, steeling herself. The side entrance is just meters away, but Guard Kang's shadow stretches across it, blocking her path like a wall of authority. She pauses, breath shallow, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility and danger. The moment demands movement, yet every option bears cost. Minji's fingers curl tighter around the basket strap as she edges toward the narrow side entrance. Every step crunches on the concrete, amplified against the silent pause that hangs over the doorway. Her heartbeat echoes in her ears, a relentless drum reminding her that time is bleeding faster than she can move. A shadow falls across the doorway. Guard Kong has shifted, blocking the path without a word. From behind, the soft click of polished shoes announces reinforcements. Two more bodyguards step out from the building's corner, faces unreadable, eyes scanning, searching. One lingers near the sedan, the other angles subtly toward Min-ji, almost imperceptibly. Their presence shifts the balance, the air thickening with authority. The luxury of Hanul Tower's marble steps becomes a gauntlet. Min-ji senses it before she sees it, the subtle pivot of a head, the slight narrowing of an eye. Bodyguard Lee pauses, his gaze slicing over her like a blade, lingering just long enough to make her stomach clench. She can feel the weight of scrutiny, the potential for violence tethered to each heartbeat. One wrong move, and everything she's risking could snap. The realization strikes her. Visibility has a cost. She glances past the guards, eyes landing on the glint of Joon-Ho through the tinted glass, yet the threat she glimpsed earlier feels heavier now. The guards are extensions of that threat, their discipline silent but lethal. The city hums around them, indifferent, yet here she is, fragile and exposed in the center of unseen danger. Min-ji shifts her basket slightly, the woven strap scraping against her wrist, grounding her. Each sound, the soft shuffle of shoes, the quiet adjustment of a tie, the subtle hum of the sedan's engine, feels magnified. She realizes the environment itself conspires to slow her, to test her resolve. Risk radiates from every direction. Guard Kong steps closer, his shoulder brushing against hers, not violently, but with unspoken authority. Min-ji freezes, heart stuttering. She can't retreat, can't push past him yet, and yet every second spent here tightens the invisible noose. Her chest burns, a mix of fear and determination. Every fiber of her body insists she move, but the guard's presence compresses the space of action, making each step heavier. Bodyguard Lee shifts again, just a fraction, his attention now fully on her. There's a subtle menace in the way he tilts his head, the slight tightening around his eyes. She senses a threshold, cross it, and the consequences are immediate and potentially lethal. Her mind races through contingencies, none of them safe. Improvisation becomes survival. A pause hangs in the air, a silence so thick it presses against her eardrums. Min-ji inhales slowly, tasting the tension. The basket in her hands feels heavier than it should, the weight of responsibility pressing down with every heartbeat. The shadows of the bodyguards stretch across the polished steps, sharp, deliberate, their presence a reminder that authority here is absolute. Min-ji edges along the side, careful, measured, trying to remain unnoticed. Her eyes flick constantly between the narrow entrance and the security detail. One misstep, she risks immediate detection and the collapse of the fragile advantage she holds. The stakes have escalated, the trap she overheard looms, invisible yet imminent. The faint reflection of Lee's eyes catches her movement in the tinted glass. They sharpen, calculating. His posture tightens ever so slightly, a predator sizing up prey. Min-ji freezes again, the urgency in her chest coiling tighter. The line between success and catastrophic failure has never felt so thin. Min-ji freezes mid-step as bodyguard Lee's narrowed gaze lingers. Her chest tightens, a cold prickle crawling up her spine. For a heartbeat, the world narrows to the weight of his stare, the polished marble beneath her shoes, the basket pressing against her wrist. A faint scent of citrus from the packaged drinks mingles with the metallic tang of the car door, and it sparks something deep in her memory, a small fragment of courage she had buried, almost forgotten. Her father's voice surfaces, faint but distinct, cutting through the tension. Courage isn't absence of fear, Min-ji. It's moving forward even when the world wants you to freeze. She shivers, recalling the rough warmth of his calloused hands guiding her along uneven streets of Mapo district, teaching her to balance her steps and hold her ground against those bigger, stronger, threatening. The echo of that memory coils around her chest, a mix of longing and resolve. She shifts slightly, angling to keep Lee in her peripheral vision. Each movement is deliberate, measured, but her mind flashes to the lessons he drilled into her. Assess, anticipate, endure. Her pulse thrums in rhythm with the lessons of her youth, reminding her that hesitation is not an option. She's no longer just a frightened girl on the sidewalk. She carries fragments of someone who once stood taller, unbowed. The city sounds fade into a low hum, a distant siren punctuating her heartbeat. Every honk, every footstep, every murmured conversation reminds her of the chaos surrounding her. Yet in that chaos, her father's voice steadies her. The basket in her hands suddenly feels heavier, not with the snacks it holds, but with the responsibility of action, the moral imperative she cannot abandon. Her eyes flick to the black luxury sedan again. Joon-Ho's briefcase gleams under the streetlights, the metallic edge reflecting the faint glow. The vehicle is a barrier, a threshold she must cross with nothing but nerve and instinct. The memory of her father's stern encouragement presses against her ribs like a physical weight. She tastes the faint tang of sweat and dust on her lips and reminds herself that fear cannot paralyze her, not when consequences are imminent. Minji's fingers tighten around the basket strap. She recalls a particular evening, the last time her father walked her home under a gray, rainy sky, warning her about silent threats, teaching her to notice the unspoken. Some dangers come cloaked in politeness, Minji. Don't ignore what your eyes see. Those words echo now, each syllable hammering against the walls of her hesitation. She inhales sharply, trying to anchor herself in the present. Every fiber of her being urges her to act, yet the fear of detection presses in from all sides. The polished steps, the shadows of guards, the faint click of Lee's shoes, they all converge in a pressure that threatens to fracture her resolve. But the fragment of courage, fragile yet undeniable, coils inside her like a hidden ember ready to flare. A sudden gust of wind carries the scent of rain from Han River over the city, blending with the heat of the asphalt and the faint perfume of someone inside the building. Her eyes catch a fleeting reflection in the sedan's glass, a shadow moving in tandem with her own. The memory of her father's hand gripping hers, steady and firm, pulses through her. Minji's chest tightens as she inches lightly in her hand. Bodyguard Lee's eyes follow every motion, a silent judge weighing each step. The weight of the street beneath her worn shoes suddenly feels heavier, not from the asphalt, but from the memories pressing up, relentless and vivid. Her gaze drifts to the polished glass of the office building in Mapo District, the reflections of skyscrapers bending light and shadow in sharp angles, mirroring the moral crossroads stretching before her. A flash of memory strikes her, a cold night months ago, empty stomach pressing against her ribs as she counted the coins she'd earned selling snacks on Seogang Bridge. Rain soaked her hair, dripped down her neck, and she hugged herself tighter than the woven basket ever could. Other kids laughed, skipping home to warm kitchens, while she scuttled beneath dim street lamps, invisible yet acutely aware of the world's indifference. Her father's words echo softly, "You survive because you move, Minji. Not because it's easy, because it's right." The street hums around her now, horns and murmurs blending into a tense rhythm. Each sound sharpens her awareness of the security perimeter. Her hand drifts over the basket strap, brushing the edges of packets she sold 100 times, each a reminder of sacrifice and struggle. Hunger and cold, loneliness and exclusion, they all forged her backbone. That backbone, honed through nights of gnawing emptiness, pulses now in the hollow of her chest. A scent of rain-soaked asphalt mingles with the faint perfume leaking from the lobby of the building. It triggers another fragment, her father kneeling beside a flickering candle in their tiny Mapo apartment, showing her how to light it without spilling wax. "Control what you can," he whispered. "Hold steady when the world shakes." Those lessons, once mundane, now crystallize into the courage demanding she act, even as the weight of risk presses against her. Lee shifts his stance, the thin edge of threat sharpened in his posture. One small misstep, and her presence could invite consequences beyond imagination. Her stomach knots, but the memory of scraping by, of nights spent trading warmth for dignity, steals her fingers around the basket. She has already given so much of herself to survive. To step back now would betray not just the moment, but the life that honed her instincts. The air carries a faint metallic tang, the scent of the briefcase Joon-Ho carries. It is no ordinary object, and she knows instinctively that whatever lies inside could change everything. The knowledge tightens the moral coils around her. Every second that she hesitates, the weight of what might happen escalates. Her courage, drawn from years of deprivation, must now confront a new, more dangerous hunger, the threat of lethal power standing a few paces away. Minji's eyes flick toward the security men, then back to the boss's briefcase, and she sees the line of consequence stretching clearly ahead. It is not just her body on the line, it is her integrity, the hard-won sense of right she inherited from her father, now pressing her forward. A deep breath fills her lungs with the scent of asphalt and wet stone, her pulse a rapid drumbeat, echoing the lessons of her past. For a fleeting moment, the city sounds fade. She can feel the memory of every cold, lonely night in the streets, every pang of hunger that once drove her to barter and hustle, every silent promise to herself to never flinch when injustice loomed. Those sacrifices weigh on her now, anchoring her courage against the dangerous tide threatening to sweep her away. Her grip tightens. Each heartbeat reminds her that delay is no longer a choice, it is a risk. Her father's voice whispers through the chaos, "Stand when you must, Min-ji." Fear is never enough to hold you back. Min-ji's knees tremble as she steps closer to the black sedan, the polished metal reflecting the late morning Bodyguard sun. Lee's gaze follows her relentlessly, every slight twitch of her shoulder and basket strap catalogued. The narrow space between the sidewalk and the car feels like a canyon. A single misstep could drop her into consequences too heavy to bear. Her chest tightens, and for a heartbeat, the memories of Mapo's empty streets press against her ribs, reminding her why retreat is impossible. Joon-Ho pauses mid-step, briefcase hovering at his side. His dark eyes flick to Min-ji, hesitation threading through his otherwise flawless composure. Around him, the two security men shift subtly, knees bending, shoulders squared, instincts ready. The hum of the city fades, replaced by the taut rhythm of his breath, the quiet shuffle of polished shoes across marble. Min-ji's voice, small but urgent, breaks the fragile stillness. "Stop. You can't." Lee steps closer, subtly blocking a wider approach, his hand brushing the handle of his concealed weapon. Min-ji freezes, aware of the razor-thin line separating moral courage from mortal danger. Sweat beads at her temples. Her basket, once a shield of normalcy, now feels absurdly fragile against the looming threat of Joon-Ho's power. Yet she cannot look away. Every instinct screams that she must act, even as her pulse hammers like a drumbeat in a storm. Joon-Ho tilts his head, assessing her, calculating the risk of listening to a teenage street seller. For a moment, he is motionless, caught between certainty and doubt. The metallic tang of the briefcase reaches her nose, and she senses the gravity of what it contains, something that could kill, something that could change everything. The weight of the potential outcome presses down, narrowing the moral space she occupies. One wrong move, and her courage becomes folly, her integrity a liability. A memory surfaces in the press of tension. Her father, kneeling beside a flickering candle, standing when the world expected her to cower. The echo sharpens her resolve. She presses forward, words tighter, voice unwavering despite the quiver of fear. "You don't know what's coming. Please listen." Lee's eyes narrow, the silent warning unmistakable. He shifts his stance subtly, suggesting that a step too close, or too loud, could provoke lethal force. Min-ji senses the danger spiraling, every second she delays, every hesitation, thickening the stakes. Her basket sways, a fragile reminder of the small life she carries forward amidst enormous danger. Her fingers tighten around its strap as if anchoring herself to her father's lessons. Joon-Ho's hand hovers over the briefcase again. He tilts his head, assessing, weighing. Around him, the security team stiffens, sensing the tension crackling like a live wire. Min-ji senses that even a glance from Lee could trigger violence, and yet, she cannot step back. Moral pressure and imminent physical risk fuse into a single unbearable knot. Her body quivers, her lungs burn, but she holds her ground, letting the moral clarity sharpen every heartbeat. The city hums faintly at the edges, horns and chatter slipping past the immediate bubble of danger. Min-ji's mind races, counting milliseconds, imagining outcomes, calculating the impossibility. The basket feels suddenly heavier than it ever has, a symbol of her stand against inevitability. Sweat drips into her eyes, blurring the edges of polished glass and steel, but the memory of nights spent hungry, unseen, drives her forward. She cannot flinch. She will not. One subtle shift in Lee's stance, one tightening of his jaw, tells her the margin for error has shrunk. Joon-Ho's eyes linger on her longer than logic allows, caught in the silent gravity of a child daring to intervene in a world of lethal authority. The moral tension stretches taut, threads of consequence stretching across the space between her and the briefcase, between as Lee takes a step forward, his polished shoes scraping lightly against the marble of Joon-Ho's private entrance. The sun glints off his black sunglasses, an invisible shield over eyes that miss nothing. The space between her and the sedan shrinks with every measured movement. Every instinct screams that a single misstep could provoke immediate violence. Joon-Ho's hand hovers over the briefcase, fingers still poised, but his attention flickers toward the approaching bodyguard. The hesitation that saved Min-ji a heartbeat ago now tightens into a vice. She senses that the fragile moral window is narrowing, closing like a trap she cannot escape. Her chest aches, adrenaline fuels her voice. Please. You have to see. Lee's gloved hand brushes the car door, a warning without words. The subtle motion communicates more than any spoken command. Min-ji freezes, caught between moral urgency and the ever-present danger of physical retaliation. Her stomach twists, the sun bakes the asphalt, adding heat and smell to the pressure. She feels the weight of every eye on her, each one a judgment, a threat waiting to materialize. Her thoughts flicker to her father, the lessons of courage that once seemed abstract now painfully tangible. She must act, and she must act without hesitation, because hesitation now carries a cost she cannot calculate. Every second spent considering the odds tightens the moral and physical grip of the moment. Her hands tighten around the strap of her basket, knuckles white. Lee moves again, subtly, adjusting his stance, stepping slightly into her path, a silent assertion of power. The small gap she occupied moments before now narrows, shrinking the space where moral rightness and physical safety can coexist. Every breath she draws tastes of tension, metallic and acrid. Min-ji swallows, forcing courage into her limbs, forcing herself forward despite the rising fear that coils around her like steel wire. Joon-Ho glances with the precision of someone accustomed to control. He hesitates once more, but the delay is now dangerous. His eyes linger on Min-ji, calculating, questioning whether a child's warning merits deviation from the path he has always commanded. The moral confrontation presses down, heavier than concrete, demanding a response before the consequences spiral. Min-ji feels her options evaporating. Every street sound, every distant horn, reminds her that the city moves forward while her stand freezes time in this sliver of confrontation. She inhales the scent of polished leather and hot asphalt, the mingling of risk and authority tangibly pressing against her chest. Every muscle tenses, aware that a single wrong glance or step could tip the balance toward disaster. She forces her gaze upward, locking eyes with Joon-Ho, letting the moral imperative radiate through posture, through trembling fingers, through words carried on the wind. The silence is almost unbearable. Even Lee's measured breathing becomes a drumbeat counting down the narrowing seconds. Min-ji's courage is all she has, and yet, it is enough, or perhaps barely enough, to hold the moral weight of the moment. A faint shift, a step closer by Lee, signals that the trap is tightening. The world contracts to this narrow line between her and the sedan, between her moral urgency and the lethal potential of authority. Her chest rises and falls in controlled bursts, the basket swaying slightly as if echoing her fragile hold on this moment. Every nerve screams that failure is imminent if recognition does not come now. Min-ji's pulse thrums like a drum in her ears as Lee's shadow edges closer, glinting sunglasses fixed on her every movement. The space between her and the black sedan has shrunk to a knife's width. Joon-Ho's hand lingers near the door handle, poised, still undecided, but every fraction of a second counts. The moral and physical stakes merge into a single, suffocating weight. Her breath catches. The basket in her hand feels heavier than it should, the woven pattern pressing into her palm, grounding her in the reality of choice. She forces herself forward, heel to pavement, eyes locking onto Joon-Ho's. Stop. Her voice cuts across the air, small yet unwavering. Every syllable carries the urgency of a life poised on the edge of consequence. Lee shifts, subtly, a predator testing the response of prey. Min-ji doesn't flinch, doesn't step back. The leather of his gloves creaks against the metal railing, a sound that might as well be a countdown. The city around them hums, but she hears nothing beyond the rising pressure of moral imperative, the quiet implosion of seconds that demand action. Joon-Ho pauses, the crease in his brow deepening. For a heartbeat, he weighs the warning of a girl against the authority of his own instinct, the weight of his reputation and the unseen network that moves at his command. Minji's chest rises and falls with controlled fury. She feels every heartbeat echo in her ears, the metallic tang of adrenaline thick on her tongue. A sudden wind brushes past, scattering the edges of her hair and carrying the faint smell of hot asphalt and exhaust fumes. It's enough to remind her, there is no neutral path here. Every hesitation, every step unmeasured, accelerates the irreversible nature of her choice. She clenches the basket tighter, nails digging into woven fibers, grounding herself in the certainty of moral duty. "Do not enter that car," she insists, voice trembling only slightly. Her words are deliberate, a direct confrontation, forcing her presence to occupy the thin space between potential disaster and choice. Lee's gaze sharpens, a flicker of recognition passes. He knows she is not just pleading. She is challenging him. Challenging the order he is sworn to uphold. The air thickens. The hum of the city fades into the background as Joon-Ho's eyes lock onto hers, searching for something he has not needed to find in years. Moral clarity from someone without power, without allegiance, without expectation. Minji feels the weight of every hidden eye in the vicinity, every hand that could strike, every decision that could end her in a second. A bead of sweat drifts down her temple. She does not wipe it. She cannot. Every movement must remain committed, every gesture a testament to her moral resolve. She senses the culmination of all her sacrifices, all the hunger, all the nights she chose courage over comfort, condense into this moment. There is no retreat. There is no neutra. The sudden sharp intake of breath that escapes Joon-Ho's chest is almost drowned out by the hum of the city, but Minji hears it. The moment stretches, taut as wire, as Lee freezes mid-step, the tension in his body a mirror of her own. The car door remains closed, untouched, its dark surface reflecting the cluster of city lights above, distorted, flickering. For the first time in minutes, the immediate threat loosens, but Minji knows better than to exhale fully. Danger never truly retreats in the shadows of Gangnam. Sirens pierce the distance, faint yet insistent, pulling at the periphery of awareness. Security teams, alerted by the commotion, begin converging, suited men moving in coordinated patterns, radios crackling, feet tapping against asphalt. Each step carries its own calculated weight. Minji senses the surveillance tightening around her. Eyes follow her, some suspicious, some assessing, some calculating loyalty. Recognition of her bravery flickers in a few amid rigid protocol. Minji feels the physical toll. Her shoulders sag slightly, muscles trembling under adrenaline's overstimulation. The basket hangs awkwardly at her side, dampened with sweat from the tension, a grounding reminder that she acted fully, irrevocably. Her heart refuses to slow, hammering in time with the mechanical shuffle of approaching authority. She tastes copper at the back of her throat, the tangible residue of risk she cannot undo. Joon-Ho remains momentarily still, observing her with an unreadable expression. There is recognition there, a flash that acknowledges the moral calculus of her act, but it's guarded, measured, constrained by habit and instinct. She knows she cannot rely on admiration. It is the protection of action, not sentiment, that shields them now. The precariousness of that shield makes her pulse spike again. From the corner of her eye, Minji notes a shadow detach itself from the cluster of security. One of Lee's men moves with quiet precision, adjusting his path to monitor her without overtly signaling intent. The potential for immediate danger persists, a subtle vibration under the surface. Every breath she takes is a negotiation between courage and survival, and the balance teeters dangerously. She shifts, small, deliberate movements to remain visible yet non-threatening, reinforcing presence without provoking aggression. Every gesture communicates control and resolve. The tilt of her head, the squared shoulders, the slow, deliberate placement of the basket on the pavement. She is staking her moral claim while navigating the razor-thin edge of risk. Her eyes flick back to Joon-Ho, scanning for confirmation of intent. He does not speak, does not move, yet a slight tightening around his jaw suggests an internal calculus, weighing consequences she cannot see. Minji's sense of responsibility deepens. It is no longer just a matter of action. She bears the weight of potential fallout. She occupies the scene. Radio chatter rises, clipped Korean phrases, punctuated by sharp commands. The authority she sees is both reassurance and warning. Their response confirms the threat is acknowledged but not yet neutralized. Each officer's step, each mirrored glance, compounds the tension, layering informational pressure over physical risk. Min-ji absorbs it all, mind alert, muscles taut, senses stretched across the street and into the approaching chaos. She exhales slowly, almost imperceptibly, a micropause in the storm of attention. Her gaze scans the immediate perimeter, pedestrians at a cautious distance, their whispers curling through the air like smoke, the glint of car windows reflecting movement, distant horns warning of an urban world unaware of the fragile line being walked here. The city's rhythm is unchanged, but for Min-ji, every sound and shadow now carries significance. The basket rests at her feet. Her fingers brush its edge. It has become more than a prop. It is the artifact of her courage, tangible proof that she acted. Yet even as the weight of action grounds her, she senses the aftershocks rippling outward. Security teams have adjusted, eyes sharpening, intentions focused, but uncertainty remains. Danger may have receded temporarily, but she knows it lingers, patient and unbroken. The city exhales. Horns and sirens fade to a low, persistent hum, as though the streets themselves are remembering the tremor that passed through them. Min-ji stands where she fell silent, the basket abandoned at her feet, a faint weight she no longer notices. The asphalt beneath her palms is rough, gritty, each grain pressing reminders into her skin. She does not move. Movement feels irrelevant. Even breath is heavy, measured against the absence a few meters away, untouched but still conspicuous, its polished surface reflecting streetlights like a dark, fractured mirror. Inside, the vehicle is empty of immediate threat, yet every shadow in its frame lingers as if waiting. The guards, a few steps back, shift their weight, murmuring into radios, faces tight with professional restraint. Their alertness no longer feels like protection, it feels like a barrier between her and whatever might follow, a reminder of the cost she bore to insist her voice be heard. Min-ji's palms are raw from tension, knuckles white, yet she does not massage them. She lets the ache settle, a physical mark of courage carried too long. Her eyes drift across the street, the neon signage flickers unevenly, the glass facades catch fragments of movement she cannot track, the smell of exhaust and fried street food lingering like smoke in a room after a fire. Each detail presses on her in silence, unremarked upon yet deeply felt. She notices the way a loose cigarette but spins in the gutter, carried by a faint current of wind, the way a taxi brakes sharply, its tires hissing against wet asphalt. Nothing in the city has changed, yet nothing feels the same. The basket at her feet reminds her of the distance between intention and consequence. She had moved to act, and now the aftermath occupies the space around her like a new gravity. Her chest is tight, her heart, still trembling, refuses to settle. There is no applause, no recognition beyond the briefest acknowledgement in the stares of officers and bodyguards. There is only weight, pressing down in layers, relief, fear, fatigue, moral persistence. She imagines her father, the echo of his quiet insistence on courage threading through her mind, not as a comfort but as a pressure, a standard she cannot escape. Min-ji's gaze drifts upward, catching the glow of a window high above a building across the street. The angle is wrong, reminds her of a time when she had to navigate spaces unseen, unnoticed, surviving on caution alone. She feels the resonance of that girl in the cold, the one who learned that silence could be weaponized, and that presence could be dangerous. The girl who waited, watched, and then acted, sometimes wrong, sometimes right. She had become that girl again today, and yet the city does not applaud such acts, it simply continues, indifferent. The distant horn blares. Min-ji flinches, the sudden noise folding into the rhythm of her heartbeat. She notices the subtle shifts, a passerby pausing to glance her way, a reflection in a window catching her face, sharp with tension and resolve. No one approaches. No one congratulates. The basket remains where she left it. Her breath moves slowly through her nose, hot against the chill in the air. Every sensation is heightened by stillness, the city's normalcy now alien, its indifference a heavy companion. Her eyes linger on the empty car once more. The polished black surface catches the neon haze, splitting light into shards, fractured lines that remind her of Table 9, the quiet cafeteria corner where a lie once hung in the air like smoke. She remembers that flicker of tension, the moment her voice had first stepped into the space of power and threatened the invisible structures around her. That weight has not disappeared. It is here, lodged in her chest, in her palms, in the silence. The city hums around her, the ordinary carrying an aftershock she cannot shake. The basket, the car, the officers, they are all markers of what happened, of what she risked, and what remains unresolved. Every reflection and every shadow seems to ask questions she cannot answer, leaving only sensation. The grit beneath her fingers, the distant hiss of tires, the echo of her heartbeat threading through the streets. Minji straightens slightly, a subtle shift, almost imperceptible, as if testing the gravity of her own present.